Introduction to the End of the World starting from the British Museum. What can you get by visiting the British Museum? Suhanxing received the arrival of the end of the world, and the earth was filled with gunpowder. Alien creatures turned the earth into a battlefield. Obtaining a reborn teammate changed her and her friend's tragic life. We also obtained a therapeutic ancestral pendant that was successfully integrated in the museum and upgraded to a space with accompanying spirits. It's just that. Chapter 1. Reminders from Strangers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Inside the British Museum. Suhanxing stood in the hall of this special exhibition, looking at numerous cultural relics belonging to China. Her emotions were complex. If only she could bring back these national treasures that were stolen by Britain. At the same time, the prompt sound on the phone made Suhanxing lower her head to check. A mysterious beam of light appears outside the atmosphere over the UK, and the specific cause is currently under investigation. NASA suggests that it may be a sign of extraterrestrial civilization, and China's space agency is also observing. Musk suggests that the malfunction of the star chain may be related to the appearance of mysterious atmospheric light columns. The comments section is mostly about discussing these news. Is it really fake? An extraterrestrial civilization. What's wrong with him? Is it delaying me from earning 2,000 yuan a month? Wash and sleep, tomorrow we still have to move bricks. I think it's just a mirage. Aliens. It's a bit outrageous. While Suhanxing was feeling emotional, she suddenly felt someone tugging at her bag. Is there a thief? Suhanxing quickly turned her head to look at a young man she didn't know. The man is wearing a beige hooded T-shirt, a baseball cap with a hood over it, a pair of sunglasses, and a black mask. Seeing such attire, Suhanxing suddenly became vigilant and took a step back. She asked, "What do you want to do?" The man seemed to understand the awkwardness and quickly pulled off his mask, revealing his sharp jawline and moderately thick lips. He then took off his sunglasses. "Qingben beauty, why do you want to be a thief?" This is Suhanxing's first reaction when she sees a man. The man's facial lines are perfect, tough yet firm, warm yet not too soft, with a high nose bridge and bright and firm eyes. However, Suhanxing did not relax her guard because the other person was so handsome. Who knows, there are no bad guys among handsome men. Sensing Suhanxing's guard, Zhou Henyu smiled bitterly and finally saw her two friends walking forward. He quickly chased after them. In order to avoid Suhanxing running away directly, Zhou Henyu spoke directly, "Suhanxing. Do you know me?" Suhanxing carefully examined the other person again, confirming that she didn't know them. "We know each other, I'm Zhou Henyu, but you don't know me yet, but it's not important. I have something very important to tell you now. Sorry, I really can't remember who you are, but what's the reason you came to me for?" Zhou Henyu looked left and right, surrounded by visitors. "It's not convenient to talk here, you come with me." He then pulled Suhanxing's arm and walked out of the exhibition hall. Suhanxing quickly shook off Zhou Henyu's hand and said, "What are you doing? Chinese people are now walking in foreign currency, and every year their compatriots are abducted and sold while traveling. She doesn't remember this person, but the other person is always tampering with her. She's from a foreign land, and who knows how this person knows her name. If she were to be sold here, she wouldn't be able to find a direction. Your family is in Longqing, your father's surname is Su, your mother's surname is Han, you have an older brother named Su Hanming, and your family has a dog named Taosu. This time you are traveling to Europe, and you also have your classmates." Zhou Henyu said in one breath. "This is also too detailed. The other party not only knows who she is traveling with, but also knows the specific situation of her family, and even knows the name of her brother. You should know that even her roommates only know that she has a brother, but they don't know what his name is. Do you really know her? What's going on?" Suhanxing asked as he followed Zhou Henyu to a quiet corner. Zhou Hengyu lowered his voice and said, "A major disaster is about to occur. The pillars of light in the sky will bring the flames of war from extraterrestrial civilizations. This is a severely affected area, and we need to run towards Exhibition Hall 33. There will be a place where we can take refuge and temporarily avoid the first wave of disasters." Originally, when Suhanxing heard the other party share so much detailed information about her, she quickly sent a message. But now, when she suddenly said something like a disaster might happen soon, Suhanxing thought of the push she saw on her phone just now. It seems that this person must have seen it too, but there is no reliable reason to cheat. Suhanxing lowered her face and said, "It's not feasible to deceive people with this kind of thing. Could you please come up with a more reasonable reason next time? I don't know how you actually know my information, but please step aside. My friends and I will continue to visit." After speaking, Suhanxing turned around and was about to leave. Suhanxing. Zhou Hengyu grabbed Suhanxing's wrist and said, "What I said is true. In fact, we didn't know each other originally, we only met after a disaster came. We have experienced life and death together, and you died to save me. Suhanxing, I am reborn, and the only person we can trust is you. This is unbelievable. It's both an alien and a reborn. You're writing a novel here. Let go." Suhanxing tried hard to break free, but found that it didn't work at all. The other person held tightly, but their eyes were very serious, as if eager for her to believe them. But Suhanxing still stared coldly at Zhou Hengyu. She still remembered her parents' advice to be careful when going out and reading books. "If you don't let go, I'll shout." Zhou Hengyu was helpless. If the two of them were in a different situation, he might not believe it. After all, the sudden arrival of the apocalyptic disaster was something that the whole world had not anticipated. However, recalling the last moment when Suhanxing was grabbed into the sky by the giant claw to save him in his past life, Zhou Hengyu would never give up on Suhanxing. This girl sacrificed herself in her past life and saved his life. Zhou Hengyu looked at Suhanxing firmly and seriously again. "I know you don't believe me, so let's consider it a different order of visits and go to Exhibition Hall 33 first. Anyway, even if nothing happens, it won't cause you any losses, right?" Suhanxing looked at Zhou Hengyu's eyes and pondered for a moment. Anyway, Exhibition Hall 33 was originally included in the route selection for visiting, so if we go ahead, it won't affect anything. At this moment, Zhou Hengyu also saw that Suhanxing had been persuaded, but there was still some hesitation. However, Zhou Hengyu didn't have any more time left and could only quickly add, "There is still about half an hour until the disaster strikes. Go call your friends out now and immediately go to Exhibition Hall 33. By the way, you will encounter another girl named Zhao Wenwen with you in Exhibition Hall 33. You must be on guard against her, and most importantly, protect your ancestral necklace. Don't treat Zhao Wenwen." After saying these words, Zhou Hengyu quickly turned around and continued, "Meeting in Hall 33, I'll go buy something first. I'll go there right away, and you guys should hurry up." Zhou Hengyu left the exhibition hall, and Suhanxing, who had stayed behind, was truly shocked. Her hand unconsciously pressed down on her neck, feeling the ancestral pendant hanging under her clothes. How did he know? He can't possibly know. Chapter 2. Advent of Aliens. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pinching the ancestral pendant hanging under her clothes, Suhanxing couldn't help but take Zhou Henyu's words seriously. Is it difficult? What he said is true. The necklace was handed to her by her mother when she turned 16, passed down from her grandmother to her mother, and also from her grandmother's mother to her grandmother. It has always been passed down from woman to man, and can be passed down after the inheritor turns 16. And this necklace is actually a healing artifact. In addition to maintaining one's own health, it can also accelerate the healing of wounds. Moreover, as long as the inheritor wears it for 10 years, this effect on themselves will continue to exist, so women from their family have a long lifespan. However, this ancestral artifact will not be disclosed to anyone other than the inheritor and the deceased. So, even her father and brother didn't know that this thing was significant. How could this stranger know? If it weren't for her telling the other person personally, no one would have known about this matter. Suhanxing returned to the exhibition hall with a heavy heart, and saw her two friends, Xiang Muan and Lin Lu, still discussing around a beautiful folding fan. Hanxing, how did you come here? Look at this folding fan, it's too beautiful. I heard that many of the exhibits at this special exhibition are personal collections, maybe this is the only chance we can see them. Xiang Muan saw Suhanxing and pulled her to say, I was just thirsty and found a place with fewer people to drink some water, Suhanxing replied. Let's continue browsing and go see that sea map. As she walked forward, Suhanxing's mind was filled with what Zhou Hengyu had just said. The end of the world, rebirth, exhibition hall 33, and half an hour left, which made her appear somewhat absent-minded. With stars. What are you thinking? Xiang Muan's voice pulled Suhanxing back. Nuanyuan, let's go to exhibition hall 33. Ah. We haven't finished reading here yet. Didn't we agree to have lunch after reading here, and then go to see exhibition halls 33 and 95? I couldn't understand why Suhanxing suddenly rushed to another exhibition hall. Suhanxing remembered what Zhou Hengyu had just said, that they would meet Zhao Wenwen at exhibition hall 33. She quickly replied, I remember Wenwen said yesterday she was going to exhibition hall 33, and she might be there. Go find that young lady. Can you still lose her even after being so big? She looks like that in the morning. Xiang Muan pouted. There's nothing we can do. If someone really gets lost, how can we explain to her family when we return to China? It's just her temper. If it's too bad, we won't bring her out next time. Upon hearing Suhanxing's words, Xiang Muan remained silent for a while before finally nodding in compromise and saying, okay, you're right too. Let's go. Seeing that Xiang Muan understood, Suhanxing breathed a sigh of relief. If that disaster, such as aliens, were true, Zhao Wenwen might be in danger of her life. It was her roommate in the same room who refused to save her. Suhanxing really couldn't do it. 3 people came out of the special exhibition hall and walked towards hall 33. And at this moment, suddenly a loud noise came from the sky. Immediately after, there were bursts of screams and violent shaking of the ground. Subsequently, Suhanxing helplessly saw a huge ceiling falling from above the huge museum, and many people were unable to avoid it and were knocked down. Amidst the smoke and dust, Suhanxing vaguely saw a huge figure that was probably over 10 meters high, with several metallic mechanical claws, slowly standing up from the ruins. On the other side, Zhou Hengyu, who had just taken the fast food bag he ordered, looked very ugly when he heard the loud noise. Unexpectedly, the landing was advanced. He stuffed the things in his hand into his backpack, then turned around and ran back to look for Suhanxing. Standing on the stairs, Zhou Hengyu saw Suhanxing standing in a daze by the half-collapsed corridor, surrounded by chaos. Suhanxing, move forward to hall 33B, Zhou Hengyu shouted loudly. Upon hearing her own name, Suhanxing followed the sound and saw Zhou Hengyu shouting at her. Exhibition hall 33, we can only trust him now. Suhanxing regained her senses and no longer hesitated. She pulled up Lin Lu, who was also stunned and had already weakened her legs, and ran towards the position of exhibition hall 33. Zhou Hengyu also wanted to run down this side, but found that a staircase below was destroyed. Zhou Hengyu had to run to the other side, where there was a safe passage. He had to hurry to hall 33 as soon as possible. As Suhanxing ran all the way, she felt her hands getting heavier and heavier. Han. Hanxing, run slowly. Run slowly. Xiang Muan could no longer run, and Lin Lu was almost hanging on Suhanxing and Xiang Nuan's bodies, half dragging them. The more people moved in here, the fewer people there were. The previous big commotion caused people inside the museum to flee for their lives. At this moment, the three of them seemed somewhat out of place. That's it. Suhanxing glanced forward, and not far away was the entrance of Hall 33, as Zhou Hengyu had mentioned. In the center of Exhibition Hall 33 is a giant mural of the three bodhisattvas from the Yongle period of the Ming dynasty, which was also snatched from China. Due to its large size, the mural was cut into many small pieces and later reassembled. The entire mural used to be seamlessly integrated, but even if it has been destroyed, one can still imagine its former charm. When they first looked at the display picture, Suhanxing and the others had already decided that Exhibition Hall 33, yuukeangshu.net, would definitely be the place to check in. Unfortunately, at the door, Suhanxing glanced at the sign on it. If she had just heard it correctly, Zhou Hengyu was shouting 33B. Exhibition Hall 33B is the sub-exhibition hall next to Exhibition Hall 33, which displays Chinese jade artifacts. The exhibition hall is a narrow black passage, and the light from the spotlights shines through the exquisite jade artifacts, emitting a warm luster. Compared to the chaotic situation outside, this place appears much quieter. Zhou Hengyu also rushed over now. When Xiang Nuan saw Zhou Hengyu running towards them from a distance, he showed a surprised expression and said, "Am I lucky or not? Although I encountered a big earthquake, I actually met my male god Zhou Hengyu in England. Do you know him?" Suhanxing was somewhat surprised, not expecting that Xiang Nuan actually knew Zhou Hengyu. Xiang Nuan replied to Suhanxing, "I know him, but he doesn't know me. He is a legendary figure of Longgao. He was recommended to Peking University in his first year of high school and came to Oxford as an exchange student. He should be returning home this year." At this moment, Zhou Hengyu finally ran to Suhanxing and said, "Come with me, let's go in." Xiang Nuan saw Zhou Hengyu talking to Suhanxing and looked at her in confusion, but at this moment Suhanxing didn't have time to explain more. Although Xiang Nuan and the others didn't see it just now and thought it was an earthquake, she saw that huge figure. What Zhou Hengyu said is actually true. So Suhanxing followed Zhou Hengyu's footsteps without any hesitation this time. Just as a few people were walking towards Exhibition Hall 33B, a voice rang out. "Hanxing, Nuanyuan, Lulu, wait for me. Zhao Wenwen. She is really in showroom 33. Chapter 3. Escape into Underground Warehouse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The appearance of Zhao Wenwen once again confirmed what Zhou Hengyu had said before. At the same time, she also thought of Zhou Hengyu's admonition about Zhao Wenwen. Although it was not yet possible to say what Zhao Wenwen had done, after so many incredible things in front of her, Suhanxing had to be wary. When Zhao Wenwen saw Zhou Hengyu, her eyes lit up and she ran over from a distance to try to talk, but Zhou Hengyu didn't even look towards her. She picked up Suhanxing and ran straight inside. Seeing Suhanxing being dragged away, Xiang Nuanhe and Lin Lu quickly followed suit. Looking at the backs of several people, Zhao Wenwen clenched her fists and ran inside. Following Zhou Hengyu all the way into Exhibition Hall 33B, I saw about 10 people rushing inside carrying some things, obviously just a short while ago. Follow them, they are the staff here. We need to follow them to take refuge underground. The 10 or so staff members didn't expect anyone to walk inside at this time. Seeing Suhanxing and a few others present, the leader of those staff members seemed hesitant. Quickly, someone shouted towards them, signaling them to leave, but seeing that there was an escape route, how could they possibly leave? Among the dozen or so people, some began to curse them with very dirty words, and some even came over to drive them away with things. It only delayed for a few minutes, and a few more people ran in from somewhere. And at that moment, there was a loud bang on my head, and a large piece of the roof fell off and shattered on the ground. Delaying time here is not a wise choice, and the staff in the museum also cannot afford to manage Suhanxing and others. Without hesitation, the team leader quickly took out the key, touched the wall, and then opened a door. However, this was not the end. The person pressed again inside the door, using both password and identity verification, and then heard a crisp click on the ground in the recessed area of the wall. The person next to him quickly helped him pull the door up from the ground, revealing the dark entrance. The person pressed something inside, and the entrance lit up, revealing a narrow staircase below the entrance. Bang! There was another loud bang, and a hole opened up above my head. Suhanxing looked up and saw a huge machine passing by from above. Such a huge object, the pressure at close range made Suhanxing feel powerless. This machine looks like a huge jellyfish, with a semi-circular mechanical head above and many mechanical feet below that seem to be extendable. However, before Suhanxing could study it further, the huge jellyfish machine was hit by a lightning-like purple electric current, and its head rushed down and fell. Although I can only see a little bit of the situation outside from the damaged roof, I can still imagine how dangerous it is outside. "Get down quickly," Zhou Hengyu shouted fiercely. Lin Lu, who was already scared and stunned, was pulled back to her senses by the sound and ran quickly towards the entrance. Suhanxing and Zhou Hengyu quickly ran towards the entrance when a blue light suddenly flashed over them. Zhao Wenwen had just chased them all the way in, but she was a bit slow. Now, seeing the blue light sweeping down, she reached out to grab Suhanxing beside her. Seeing Zhao Wenwen go to catch Suhanxing, Zhou Hengyu instinctively pulled Suhanxing to his side. In the years after the apocalypse, Zhou Hengyu was very familiar with these blue and purple lights. Instinctively, he grabbed Suhanxing and pushed her to the ground, and the two of them narrowly avoided the blue light strafing. Suhanxing didn't see what Zhao Wenwen was planning to do, but Zhou Hengyu's gaze at Zhao Wenwen became sharper. This woman can't stay. Zhao Wenwen, who had just wanted to catch someone as a shield next to her, was not so lucky because she didn't catch Suhanxing or Zhou Hengyu's care. The outstretched hand was only lightly scanned by the blue light, leaving a burnt black wound on it, and even blood did not flow out. Ah ah! Zhao Wenwen let out a scream, clutching her painful hand and jumping uncontrollably. At this moment, the huge jellyfish-like robot that had just fallen suddenly retracted its mechanical tentacles in the middle, and 4 mechanical feet were placed around the semi-circular head from inside. One of the huge mechanical feet extended from the hole as a support, and then flew out again with force. But just like this, the roof of this piece completely collapsed, and the falling stones splattered out. Several people who ran over later were injured as a result, and even Zhou Hengyu and Suhanxing who had not yet entered were hit, let alone Zhao Wenwen who was in pain below and couldn't pay attention to the others. Zhao Wenwen was thrown out and hit the protective cover of a booth, causing her nose to turn blue and her face to swell. She even had blood oozing from the corners of her mouth. "Zhao Wenwen!" Suhanxing shouted and rushed towards Zhao Wenwen. Seeing that Suhanxing had actually gone to save Zhao Wenwen, Zhou Hengyu frowned and rushed over with him. Suhanxing picked up Zhao Wenwen and walked back. Zhou Hengyu glanced up and coldly took Zhao Wenwen from Suhanxing's hand, carrying her and running towards the entrance. The two of them crawled in and walked down, hugging each other in fear towards Nuan and Lin Lu. Originally, the stairs here were narrow but there was an elevator next to them, but the capacity of the elevator was limited. It was supposed to be lined up with the two of them just now, but a tall foreigner rushed in front of them and entered the elevator. Just as Lin Lu was moving towards the back to wait for the next elevator, the walls on both sides of the elevator were deformed due to the attack just above, and the elevator was squeezed and stuck. And the people inside were anxious and didn't know what they had done. The elevator suddenly plummeted wildly, and Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net only heard rumbling and screams. Only a few of them are still on the platform now. By the time they walked down the narrow stairs to the bottom level, the first dozen or so staff members had already disappeared. Fortunately, the lights around were not turned off. They realized that this was a very large storage room, and they could easily see many precious cultural relics at a glance, many of which were even more precious than those displayed outside. No wonder the entrance is set at Hall 33, where 80% of the things seem to come from China. After coming down, I was isolated from the intense gunfire outside, the roar of airplanes, and the engine sound of armored vehicles. A few people were very afraid of this atmosphere. After all, they were ordinary people who had not experienced much wind and waves. As Xiang Nuan approached Suhanxing trembling all over, Lin Lu began to cry softly. Suhanxing was also afraid for a while and never expected that a disaster would be like this. It wasn't until she heard Zhao Wenwen's faint and painful moans that Suhanxing perked up and went to check. Zhao Wenwen's injury at this moment is very serious. The just fall may have caused multiple fractures on her body, and I don't know if she has injured her internal organs. Take a look, is there anything you can use to wrap it up? Not long after, Zhou Hengyu and Xiang Nuan carried a cloth bag together and said, "I've spun it around, maybe this one can be used." After speaking, Zhou Hengyu squatted down next to Zhao Wenwen, carrying a cloth bag. Suhanxing planned to go pick up the cloth bag, and Zhou Hengyu said, "Let me come. I have received training in AHA before, and I know some basic rescue methods." After speaking, he looked at Suhanxing and said, "You can give me a hand next to me." Upon hearing this, Suhanxing glanced at Zhou Hengyu and said, "Is he doing this to cover up for himself?" Chapter 4. Abnormalities of Pendant. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhou Hengyu came to Zhao Wenwen's side and looked at Xiang Nuan and Lin Lu, saying, "Find a safe place to hide and give me a space. It's not conducive to the injured person's breathing to be surrounded here." "Okay." Xiang Nuan knew he couldn't help much, while Lin Lu was dizzy and trembling all over, so he pulled Lin Lu away from here. Out of the corner of his eye, he watched them walk away, and Zhou Hengyu's gaze turned coldly towards Zhao Wenwen. If it weren't for this slut stealing Suhanxing's ancestral healing treasure, Suhanxing wouldn't have suffered many post-traumatic effects due to serious injuries. I won't sacrifice myself to save him. In my memory, this area was turned into ruins, with countless deaths and injuries. Traffic and communication signals were interrupted, and most of the planes that took off before the arrival of extraterrestrial creatures were affected and crashed. Instead, they were lucky enough to accidentally follow the shelter workers into the basement to hide and escape the first wave of disaster unscathed. However, in the previous life, Suhanxing and a few others only entered Hall 33. When they encountered danger, they instinctively ran outside with others and only returned after discovering that the situation outside was even worse. As a result, Zhao Wenwen was accidentally injured while running around, and a few of them carried Zhao Wenwen all the way to take refuge. Later, Suhanxing used her ancestral necklace to treat Zhao Wenwen, but to her surprise, Zhao Wenwen had been interested in Suhanxing's necklace since then. Even after realizing that she couldn't use it, she directly destroyed Suhanxing's necklace. In the eyes of Zhou Hengyu, Zhao Wenwen, this despicable person, is even more despicable than aliens as the culprit, and she is truly indescribable in death. But at the moment, he couldn't be in a hurry. He knew Suhanxing too well. At this time, Zhao Wenwen didn't do anything to touch her bottom line. In Suhanxing's eyes, Zhao Wenwen was still a roommate, and with Suhanxing's kindness, it was impossible to watch Zhao Wenwen die. Looking coldly at Zhao Wenwen's situation, Zhou Hengyu sighed inwardly. Unfortunately, Zhao Wenwen had committed her own wrongdoing, so her injuries were much heavier than in the previous life. She had lost consciousness, but unfortunately, she didn't just die, which saved her time. Zhou Hengyu came to his senses and suspected that some things were different from his previous life because the time of the alien star's arrival was earlier. For example, regarding the issue with the elevator, when I came in the previous life, the elevator next to me was already in a damaged state, so no one took it and all the passengers came down the stairs. And at that time, Zhao Wenwen was not as seriously injured as she is now. She was only injured in one leg, and after being carried in by Suhanxing and the others, she could still jump down the stairs with the help of others. After they came down here, they didn't stop either, but walked with the dozen or so staff members, not left alone like they are now. But no matter what, at least this place is still relatively safe for now. They have dodged the most serious first wave of attacks and lost the staff leading the way. The next step is up to them. She lost consciousness. I'll help her clean up the foreign object in the wound first, and you can help her stop the bleeding, Zhou said. As he rushed to Hall 33, he handed Suhanxing a flashlight he found on a security guard's body. Suhanxing helped him with lighting, and Zhou nodded at Suhanxing after cleaning up foreign objects and took the illuminated flashlight. Pull the ancestral necklace out of her clothes, with a long string. Suhanxing held the necklace in her left palm, feeling a warm sensation gradually rising in her palm. Then, Suhanxing closed her right hand and left hand, kneaded them, and finally released the necklace. She gently stroked the area where Zhao Wenwen was most severely injured with both hands. Zhou Hengyu was also the first to see firsthand how Suhanxing's ancestral necklace was treated. In his previous life, as a stranger he had met for the first time, he was not able to participate in the treatment. But now Zhou Hengyu finally understood that in the previous life, Zhao Wenwen found out that Suhanxing's ancestral necklace was so magical that she couldn't use it when she stole it. The reason for its destruction later on was that only Suhanxing's bloodline could activate the necklace's ability. The most severely injured area had stopped bleeding, and as scabs began to form, Zhou Hengyu reached out to stop Suhanxing from continuing treatment. Suhanxing, listen to my advice, keep your eyes open, live a little selfishly, there's no harm. The hidden meaning in his words is to remind Suhanxing not to be the Holy Mother. Take a clear look at the villain. Zhou Hengyu's voice was light, firm, and filled with heartache. Suhanxing remained dumbfounded. It seemed that in the post-apocalyptic world that Zhou Hengyu had experienced, her fate was not very good. She also understood the hidden meaning in Zhou Hengyu's words, and did not casually reveal her abilities, so the treatment should be continued until the end. After being advised to eat a full meal, Suhanxing recalled that Zhao Wenwen used to be quite selfish. In such a situation, Suhanxing felt that she could do it and indeed had to be cautious. So she reabsorbed the energy from the necklace and moved towards another heavily injured area. As long as Zhao Wenwen stopped bleeding and did not die due to excessive bleeding, it would be considered benevolent and righteous. Zhou Hengyu only asked Suhanxing to help Zhao Wenwen treat the 3 most serious injuries. Yu then tore open a cloth bag and took some fabrics that looked more absorbent and breathable from inside, and simply bandaged other areas for Zhao Wenwen. There is no problem with dressing, but Zhou Hengyu did not control the severity of his actions. Okay, let her lie down and rest. It should take a long time to wake up, but we still need to find a way out. Zhou Hengyu came here once in his previous life, but at that time he followed the dozen or so staff along the way. There are not only entrances and exits in Exhibition Hall 33 here, but also several important exhibition halls. However, many exhibition halls have been completely damaged, and those entrances and exits have been sealed off by some walls and the like. At that time, I followed the dozen or so staff members and searched many places back and forth before finding a place to go out. Now that he has returned, although he may still have a slight impression, he does not fully remember all the routes. Suhanxing went to the other side to look for Nguyen and Lin Lu, and found that the two were flipping through something. Upon hearing the footsteps, the two of them turned around cautiously and breathed a sigh of relief when they saw that it was Suhanxing. Xiang Nguyen walked over and excitedly grabbed Suhanxing's arm, his face tired with a hint of excitement. Hanxing, come and take a look. I have heard of many things here, they are famous cultural relics in history and are national treasures. Speaking of which, Xiang Nguyen looked several more regretfully and said, you said so many good things won't all be destroyed here, will they? Suhanxing sighed and said, yes, these are all national treasures that have drifted overseas. Unfortunately, now they are facing difficulties in self-protection. Just as she was thinking about it, Suhanxing suddenly felt the pendant on her chest become very hot. She reached out and held her hand between her heart, only to find that the pendant had a faint meaning of floating up and flying out. Chapter 5. Fusion into One Body. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Hanxing, what's wrong with you? Suhanxing suddenly covered her heart and asked Nuan. Ah. It's okay, I saw too much blood just now, it's a bit uncomfortable. Suhanxing quickly found an excuse to reply. Have you also fainted blood? Lulu also fainted blood. She was scared and her face turned pale. Now she has just recovered for a while. Xiang Nuan's hand lightly patted Suhanxing's back. I don't usually feel dizzy with blood, but just now Zhao Wenwen was a bit bleeding. Oh, is she okay? Although Xiang Nuan didn't like Zhao Wenwen, she still asked about her injuries at such times. I helped her clean the foreign body from the wound, and then bandaged it. Zhou Hengyu said there should be no danger to her life. After that, Suhanxing continued, by the way, I came here to call out to you. Zhou Hengyu said, we need to find an exit. By the way, Hanxing, it was so chaotic just now, and I haven't come to ask you yet. How did you know Yushin? Xiang Nuan was curious before, thinking that Suhanxing and Zhou Hengyu probably didn't have much communication channels before. Just now, I lost my ID in the museum. Fortunately, she helped me pick it up, otherwise it would have been quite troublesome. Zhou Hengyu walked over and saw Suhanxing pause for a moment, explaining for her. In his previous life, besides Suhanxing, Zhou Hengyu also saw several others. To be precise, I got to know Suhanxing because Xiang Nuan had known him before, but later on during the escape, everyone else got separated, so Zhou Hengyu didn't know them well. The only person he could trust was Suhanxing. So that's the case, let me tell you. When I mentioned the name of Yushin to you before, you didn't react. Xiang Nuan quickly accepted Zhou Hengyu's statement. Did you know me before? Although Zhou Hengyu had known about it for a long time, he didn't intend to reveal the news of his rebirth to anyone else except Suhanxing, so he pretended not to know and asked in reverse. Yes, Yushin. We are all from number 1 middle school, but my cousin is from Longgao. I used to go see you play basketball, Xiang Nuan replied. Zhou Hengyu nodded and said, originally, we were still from the same hometown, but now is not the time to reminisce. We need to quickly find an exit to get out of here. Although this place can avoid the first wave of war, it is not a foolproof place, and even if its structure is safe and there is no food or water, it is impossible to hide here for a lifetime. Okay, let's go find it separately. Xiang Nuan is really a little fan of Zhou Hengyu, and now she is actively looking for an exit. Nuanyuan, you and Lulu are in the same group, and we have some care for each other. Suhanxing knew that Lin Lu was very timid, so she shouted to Nuanyuan, who was already preparing to run out. Right, Lulu, come with me. Xiang Nuan came back and picked up Lin Lu, then strolled outside. Zhou Hengyu looked at Suhanxing and said, are you okay? I'm a bit dizzy, I want to sit for a while first. Zhou Hengyu had no doubts at all. After Suhanxing treated Zhao Wenwen in her previous life, she also weakened for a while. Then take a break first, and when I find you, I'll call you out. After Zhou Hengyu also went to find his mouth, Suhanxing finally released the hand that was holding onto his chest. The pendant hanging around her neck slowly floated up as Suhanxing let go of her hand. Suhanxing pulled it out of her clothes, and the pendant floated quietly in mid-air, seemingly pointing in one direction. Suhanxing followed and moved to the side, then her body turned a little further. At this moment, the position of the necklace finally pointed directly in front of her. Then Suhanxing followed the floating necklace forward and walked all the way to the depths of the collection shelf. Amazing collectibles kept passing by, and Suhanxing even saw the women's history proverbs exhibited only twice a year due to concerns about light erosion, as well as a porcelain body lacquerware from the Ming Dynasty Wanli period that she had the privilege of hearing about. The entire lacquerware is covered in red paint, with only the lion head button and the blue and white model in the middle exposed. The body of the lacquerware also has exquisite lacquer filling and gold dragon patterns, which are breathtaking due to the difficulty of the craftsmanship alone and fully demonstrate the royal style. And the surviving quantity of this type of porcelain body lacquerware is extremely rare. Looking at the world, including the two Forbidden City and several major museums around the world, it is difficult to find lacquerware objects of the same level. But Suhanxing only glanced a little longer and continued to follow the direction guided by the pendant all the way inside. Finally, at the bottom of an inconspicuous shelf, a very ancient wooden small box was dug out. The box is not locked, and from the scattered arrangement on this shelf and the thick gray covering on it, it seems that it is not particularly outstanding among these collections. However, Suhanxing clearly felt that the pendant was extremely excited, as if urging her to open the wooden box in front of her. Opening the box, there was a high-quality jade bracelet inside. Suhanxing picked up the bracelet and saw a circular cotton wool inside, which affected the overall beauty of the bracelet. No wonder at first glance, such a transparent and warm jade bracelet was actually piled up here. It turned out that there were some flaws. Although this jade bracelet is considered top-notch in the market, compared to so many treasures, it appears much more ordinary. However, when Suhanxing flipped the jade bracelet over, the feeling of familiarity arose in her heart. She immediately looked up at the pendant suspended in front of her. Her family's ancestral pendant was actually a hollow golden ball, and the inside of the golden ball was the most original inheritance. This was later created by her ancestors, which is convenient to wear and can also protect the contents inside. Suhanxing was blessed to the soul. He took off the pendant golden ball, then took out a toothpick from his bag and folded it in half. He poked it at both ends of the edge of the golden ball, and what originally looked like a whole golden ball was actually opened. Subsequently, Suhanxing removed a translucent jade egg surface embedded in the middle of the golden ball from the pendant. Before Suhanxing could hold the jade egg noodles firmly, it flew towards the jade bracelet eagerly. At the moment of contact, two objects merge into one. Suhanxing was surprised as she flipped back and forth with the bracelet, only to find no trace of stitching. The cotton wool inside was also missing, as if it was born as a whole. She tried to put the bracelet on, but as she put it on, it began to shrink and fit perfectly on Suhanxing's wrist. However, when she tried to remove it, it couldn't penetrate the joints of her palm, as if it had been put on since childhood. I don't know if this combined jade bracelet has improved the therapeutic effect. By the way, do you still keep this box? Suhanxing lowered her head to look at the wooden box in her hand. After all, it's for bracelets, why not put it away? Just as Suhanxing thought of this, the wooden box in her hand disappeared. When she regained her senses, Suhanxing found herself in a strange and empty place, where besides her, there was only one wooden box. Chapter 6. Hanging up one round of bright moon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Suhanxing was surprised by the changes in her ancestral treasure after merging it with the bracelet, and she also tried several times in surprise. This time, Suhanxing's excitement was beyond words. Unexpectedly, after merging the two objects, she obtained a space. Although this space is not as spacious as the one she used to see in novels, with mountains, water, and fields, the place is really big. At least Suhanxing's back and forth running doesn't seem to reach the end. Moreover, this space can be accessed by oneself, but I'm not sure if I can still bring others in. Out of space, Suhanxing glanced around and saw that all these things in front of her were from her own country. Collect. As Suhanxing's thoughts moved, everything in front of her eyes was taken into space by Suhanxing. Suhanxing also became more and more excited as he collected, and the speed of collection became faster. In no time, the shelves in the back rows were empty. Just as she was about to move forward to collect a new row of storage, Suhanxing suddenly felt something unusual about the bracelet. She lowered her head and used her right hand to touch the wrist of her left hand. The bracelet on her wrist was slightly feverish, and it seemed to disappear in the next second. Seeing the changes in the bracelet made Suhanxing a little flustered. What's going on? Is collecting too many things causing instability in the space? Quickly, Suhanxing's wrist was empty, and the bracelet that looked extraordinary disappeared. Suhanxing panicked and rubbed her wrist back and forth. She lifted her wrist and looked closely, and the bracelet really disappeared. No, right. Too many things have side effects. Is it impossible to store things when one has finally gained a space on their own? When Suhanxing thought of space in her mind, she suddenly saw a flower in front of her and entered the space again. And the bracelet quietly floated above her head, like a bright moon hanging in the originally gray and dusty space. Ha! Why are you here? Suhanxing was pleasantly surprised. It turned out that the bracelet was not lost, but wasn't this space included in the bracelet itself? Why can it still be stored in the space? Doubts returned to doubts. Suhanxing tried several more times and found that this did not affect her use at all. For such changes, Suhanxing is quite happy. Looking at her empty wrist, she feels a lot more at ease. At least she doesn't have to worry about being taken away by someone. Remembering that she had just wasted a lot of time trying space, Suhanxing raised her wrist and glanced at the time on the bracelet. How did it only take a minute? It seems that the passage of time inside and outside space is different. Without any worries, Suhanxing waved her hand and began to continuously store all the items around her in the space. Anyway, she hasn't seen the upper limit of the space yet, so let's keep it for now. Having a large space, Suhanxing pondered that in addition to these cultural relics, he also needed to find opportunities to collect some food and daily necessities. Where are you, Hanxing? When Suhanxing was enjoying her harvest, she suddenly heard the voice calling out to Nuan. I'm here. Suhanxing stopped and ran back. Although she still trusted Xiang Nuan, with Zhou Hengyu's previous reminder, Suhanxing still planned not to tell anyone about space for now. After running back a few steps, Xiang Nuan breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Suhanxing. I was scared to death. I just came back to look for you and found that you were missing. I thought you had gotten separated from us, and there was no signal on your phone here. I couldn't even find you. Don't worry, I won't run around. I just went in to take a look. By the way, have you found the exit? Suhanxing was also concerned about this. Even if there was space, it was useless not to leave here. Find a place that may be there, but we need to go further inside. Yushin said it's best for us to keep up and maybe we won't turn back. After saying these words to Nuan, he glanced at the slanted back and said, Han Xing, what should Zhao Wenwen do? Suhanxing thought of what Zhou Hengyu had said, hesitated for a moment, and finally made a decision. Her injury. If we move her now, it might take her life, and once we encounter a situation where we need to escape, we may not care about her. Instead of exposing her to danger, it's better to let her stay here safer. If we can find help when we go out, we should quickly call everyone to come and save her and leave. If we go out, even we will be on our own. Suhanxing didn't say anything later, but Xiang Nuan also understood that now they are mud bodhisattvas crossing the river. It's difficult to protect themselves, let alone bring unconscious Zhao Wenwen. You're right. I just tried to call the police, but I couldn't even reach them. It's uncertain what the situation is outside. If we can be saved, we can call someone to help her. The two of them went to Lin Lu again to make a decision, and Lin Lu also felt that this arrangement was better. After discussing for a while, the three of them turned to Zhou Hengyu and made arrangements. Then, they divided and went to find some things that could be used to build a pawn shop for Zhao Wenwen to settle down. And Suhanxing took advantage of the opportunity to search for things and collected almost all the cultural relics in sight around her. When Suhanxing was collecting things, she unexpectedly discovered that if reading www.uukangshu.net was close enough, even objects separated by glass could be stored in the space. This really made it very convenient for her to move without disturbing too many people. At this moment, Zhao Wenwen has been patted and covered, but she still hasn't woken up. However, seeing her breathing steady, it seems like she's asleep. A few people set off and ran towards the road that Zhou Hengyu had found before, which seemed to be an exit. The connecting passage between storage rooms is not as strong as the storage room itself. Although they are underground at this time and are not sure what the outside situation is, walking along the passage, they can occasionally feel intense vibrations, reminding them of the intense war situation outside. There are not as dim lights as in the storage room in the passage, and here it is pitch black with no visible fingers. Fortunately, the flashlight that Zhou Hengyu picked up earlier allowed them to have some brightness. 4 figures hurriedly ran forward in the passage. Be careful. Another wave of vibration caused soil to fall down. Zhou Hengyu shone a flashlight up and saw a long crack at the location where the soil had just fallen. We need to hurry up a bit longer, this channel feels very unstable. Due to the need to preserve precious cultural relics, the storage rooms are all tightly reinforced, and because each storage room has a separate entrance, the passageway is only for backup. Although it is also sturdy, it is still not as good as the storage room. A few people quickened their steps, occasionally avoiding the falling stones. But soon, they had to slow down again. One reason why it is difficult to run is that the vibration needs to stabilize the body. On the other hand, it is due to the continuous vibration falling from above, causing the dust in this passage to become thicker and thicker, making it difficult for chokers to breathe. Chapter 7. Thrilling Hair. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cough cough. Ache. No, I can't breathe anymore. Xian Nuan hummed as he pinched his nose. This won't work. Before we find the right path, people may choke to death. Suhanxing suddenly remembered that there were some wet tissues in her backpack. She quickly opened them for everyone. Cover your mouth and nose. Everyone quickly took the wet wipes handed over by Suhanxing and covered them, finally feeling better. Continuing forward, the vibrations became more and more frequent. They heard a loud bang coming from behind, indicating that the passage behind had collapsed. Let's go, don't stop. Zhou Hengyu urged several people, because at this moment, besides the sound of collapse, there was also the sound of artillery bombardment. The location above sounds like a fierce firepower battle, they cannot delay any longer, otherwise they are likely to be directly pinned down here. A few people dared not pause and ran forward with all their might, but suddenly a creaking sound came from behind, and there was a large area of furry and black mice running forward in groups. Zhou Hengyu frowned. The protection of the British Museum, especially the storage room, must be done well, otherwise so many valuable cultural relics are not easily destroyed. So, at least there won't be so many mice in the museum, these mice should have fallen from the collapsed area before. However, such a large group of mice made Lin Lu, who was already timid, scream and crawl towards the warm body next to her, wishing her feet could leave the ground. And Suhanxing is also very afraid of mice, but she is more concerned about another thing. Zhou Hengyu. Suhanxing ran to Zhou Hengyu's side and said, with so many mice running this way, is there anything behind them that makes them particularly afraid? It's possible, but it's also possible that they just fell in groups from the collapsed area above and are still in panic. As they spoke, they also ran to a crossroads. The British Museum was founded in 1753, and the underground passages below mostly refer to the basement of the British royal family. The dark underground passages crisscross deep and bottomless, with dust and a stale atmosphere permeating the air. There are many crisscrossing corridors, all of which are very similar in length and have no signs. If you are not particularly familiar with this place, it is difficult not to make mistakes. Zhou Hengyu had to stop at this separate intersection to recall his memories from the previous life. People don't come here every day, nor is it a vacuum place. There is still air and wind flowing, and naturally there will be accumulated dust. Originally, carefully discerning along the way, there were some traces left by walking on the ground, and occasional scratches on the walls, but there were still certain trajectories to trace. Unfortunately, a large number of mice passed by this way, destroying all the traces on the ground. Yushin and Hanxing, hurry up. Which side are you going on anyway? At this moment, Xiang Muan trembled and shouted loudly, she was about to collapse. Originally, seeing so many mice walking together was already challenging her physiological limits, but now because she wanted to find a way, Suhanxing and Zhou Hengyu stopped at the side, and soon a mouse climbed up their pants legs. And both Xiang Muan and Lin Lu were wearing skirts, their skin being rubbed by the furry body of the mouse, and their whole body was covered in goosebumps. Suhanxing was also quite anxious. Although she wore a pair of long pants out of fear of being exposed to the sun, they were torn jeans, and the equally brave mouse began to burrow in. At this moment, Xiang Muanhe and Lin Lu could no longer bear it and couldn't wait for Zhou Hengyu and Suhanxing to make a decision. They rushed out towards one of the roads where the mice looked relatively few. Nuanyuan, Lulu. Suhanxing had to chase after her and shout back, Zhou Hengyu's side. Zhou Hengyu originally planned to squat down and recognize it again. He felt that there were a few traces on the left wall, but more on the right, so he decided to choose the right side to go over. But when I saw Suhanxing chasing Nuanhe and Lin Lu running out to the left, I had to keep up first. Nuanyuan, Lulu, don't run around. Suhanxing still remembers Zhou Hengyu saying that in their previous life, they had separated from Xiang Muan and Lin Lu, and she didn't want to separate again. The mice in front were getting fewer and fewer, and Xiang Muanhe and Lin Lu finally regained their senses. They kept patting their bodies and legs, fearing that there might still be mice left to fall. Lin Lu's crying eyes were already swollen into a seam, and there was nothing left on her body, but she continued to pat her whole body. Lulu, Lulu, it's okay, there's no more mice, don't take photos. With the light of the flashlight, Suhanxing saw that there were red fingerprints on Lin Lu's legs, and you can imagine how hard she was taking photos. Hanxing, I can't stand it anymore, I want to go home. This time, even Xiang Muan, who has always been optimistic, couldn't help but burst into tears. Suhanxing was also very afraid, but she knew that if she retreated here, they would really be stuck here forever. You see, we've been running for so long, maybe we'll find the exit soon, but it's just a mouse, not afraid. Suhanxing hugged Xiang Muan and comforted Lin Lu. Zhou Hengyu didn't really want to disrupt their atmosphere, but there is still more important things to do now. As he approached, Suhanxing looked up at him and gave him a glance. Zhou Hengyu understood and stopped beside him, shining a flashlight everywhere. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. Suhanxing released her arm and whispered to Nuanhe Linlu, let's go. Since we have chosen the route here, let's also see if there is any way out. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Hengyu spoke up and said, I just saw a little light at the end of the corridor. Upon hearing what Zhou Hengyu said, Xiang Muanhe and Lin Lu quickly looked over, and there was indeed a faint light at the end of the road ahead. Is this the exit ahead? This idea immediately perked them up, and the four of them quickly headed towards the light, where there was a slightly concealed door. Oh my goodness, this place is too flashy, isn't it? After pushing open a slightly open door, even Xiang Muan, who had just cried loudly due to strong unease, couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. This is another storage area, and the light comes from the lighting in this storage area. Like the previous storage area, in order to avoid damaging cultural relics, the lighting in this area is relatively soft and dim. Even with only dim lighting, the contents of this storage room still shine brightly, making people unable to resist blinking their eyes, afraid that they have hallucinations. A lot. A lot of gold and gemstones. Suhanxing couldn't help but sigh after seeing the scene before her. The house is filled with gold artifacts, jewelry, and some stone coffins. Judging from the style, it is obvious that this is a storage area for Egyptian cultural relics. And Suhanxing, before carefully examining the magnificent scene before her, felt as if her wrist had been tightened. Although the bracelet was no longer worn, there was a feeling of being trapped. But that feeling is not just about being trapped, but seems to be guiding something. As the feeling grew stronger, Suhanxing felt as if the bracelet was guiding her in her search for something. Chapter 8. Common Property of Humanity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Suhanxing walked forward according to the guidance, and as she brushed past the jewelry and gold objects around her, she felt a dazzling sensation. How many good things have you snatched? If I remember correctly, when searching for information at the British Museum in the past, I also had a slight impression of the Egyptian artifact Suhanxing. According to records, the museum houses over 100,000 gold masks, ornaments, ceremonial vessels, and even more than 140 ancient Egyptian mummies and stone coffins from the pharaoh. This is really digging up their ancestors. No wonder the British Museum actually displays less than 1% of its collections. Seeing is believing, and the stored items are really rich. Before Suhanxing could finish sighing, the invisible bracelet on her wrist tightened slightly, as if reminding Suhanxing to change direction. After collecting a large number of cultural relics before, Suhanxing seems to have found some experience about space. After the cultural relics are collected into the space seems to undergo a slight change, and the space also seems to resonate with some special cultural relics, as if they are traveling in both directions. Suhanxing continued to move forward in the direction she felt, and the display here was far from the rules of the China Pavilion. I don't know if it's because she grabbed more items and didn't pay much attention, as many items were mixed together without being arranged. Of course, it may also be due to their unique arrangement method, such as year or something else, but in Suhanxing, there seems to be no specific arrangement. Until she reached a position, Suhanxing felt uncomfortable whether she was going left or right, forward or backward. Suhanxing paced back and forth, trying to find the specific location of the detection, only to find that she was still spinning in place. Suhanxing simply squatted down in place. Suhanxing, who was squatting down, moved her feet inside and only moved a little. Immediately, the feeling on her wrist became more obvious. She quickly stepped back a bit, while also looking at the items placed on both sides of her feet. Suddenly, in the huge gap between the stones in front of her, Suhanxing felt something that seemed unattractive on her wrist. Feeling this situation, Suhanxing almost moved over and squatted next to the big stone, reaching out towards the gap below, wanting to use something to pry into the gap and see if something could be pulled out. However, before Suhanxing could put her hand on it, she didn't even see what was inside the gap. It was collected into the space, and she only felt something being collected at the moment of income. The things were taken in, and Suhanxing wanted to check what was inside the space, but soon she was drawn away by the seemingly absent breath that appeared in her heated palm. She is not unfamiliar with this kind of anger. It is something that comes out of her ancestral necklace every time she needs treatment. It is also through this kind of thing that the recovery can be accelerated. But now she hasn't even been transferred, and surprisingly, she has such an effect. Is it possible that the treatment has also improved? Thinking of this, Suhanxing is quite happy. If the treatment ability is really improved, then when encountering very serious situations, he can immediately recover some, which is crucial and may be able to save his life in critical moments. Although it was not yet clear what it was, Suhanxing forgot about it because her healing ability had been improved. "What are you doing, Hanxing?" Xian saw Suhanxing suddenly squatting down in a place and chased after him in confusion, only to find Suhanxing crouching between two stone coffins, giggling foolishly. "Ah! Oh, I just wanted to take a look." Suhanxing looked up and wanted to say what kind of beautiful cultural relic to see, but now she realized that she had only looked at the sides of her feet and didn't realize that this was no longer a display rack, but 2 Egyptian coffins. Suhanxing was also a bit dazed. Did she just squat next to the stone coffin? How did she come over without any impression of the sarcophagus? Because she followed the feeling conveyed on her wrist and her attention was distracted by the shining golden objects on both sides, Suhanxing didn't even notice this. I just want to see what the legendary mummy looks like. Suhanxing finally made it round and quickly walked out to push Xiangnuan. Forget it, this kind of stone coffin is not easy to open without tools. If you don't look, you won't look anymore. That's right, there are so many beautiful gold ornaments and gemstones. What's the point of looking at a mummy? Xiangnuan didn't think much and instead pulled Suhanxing towards a pile of gold objects. Hanxing, take a look at this collar, then at this cobra crown, and this golden bracelet. TSK, you said about these pharaohs in Egypt. Do you know that later generations will not only be dug out, but also be taken here by foreigners to eat ashes? You're so angry. Pooh. Don't talk nonsense about Nuanyuan. There are several coffins here, and my cold hair has stood up. Before Suhanxing could reply, Lin Lu couldn't help but complain to Nuanyuan. What are you afraid of? It's not because we dug them up. If you want to retaliate, you should also retaliate against those robbers, Xiangnuanli replied confidently. Suhanxing glanced around and saw that there were really many valuable items here. Unlike the exquisite technology and high aesthetic of Chinese ancestors, even those who do not understand artistic and cultural values can be shocked by the real economic value of these jewelry and goldware. Although the British Museum once advocated that cultural relics have no borders. I want to take advantage of this and rationalize their robbery, which is a shameless behavior that is both appropriate and upright. But one thing is indeed true. Cultural heritage is the common property of all humanity. Cultural heritage knows no borders, but cultural relics all have their homeland. In this regard, it has to be said that the robber logic of the British Museum is shameless and directly erases the latter half of the sentence. Suhanxing has already figured out how this place will be destroyed in the future. She dare not think about it, and she cannot collect all the cultural relics in the British Museum. Even if it is fate, she can save some. I casually collected some things into the space, but because everyone was concentrated nearby, I couldn't collect them too clearly. Suhanxing saw that Zhou Hengyu had been looking for a way and ran to his side, asking, "Is that here?" Seeing that Xiang Nuanhe and Lin Lu were not too close, Zhou Hengyu whispered, "I don't think so. I've never seen so many golden objects in my memory. Even if you've been running for your life in the previous life, follow the staff here to find your way." Even though Zhou Hengyu had a bad memory, if he had seen such a large number of shining golden objects, he could never have had no impression at all. "So I'm sure I haven't been here before." Although there was still an extension road here, Zhou Hengyu didn't know where else this road could lead to. Chapter 9. Absolutely not separated. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When they pushed the door in and saw so many golden objects here, Zhou Hengyu was very certain that he had never been here in his previous life, and had not even stumbled upon them when he walked the wrong way. However, since he has arrived here, he still carefully checked the surrounding situation to see if there is also a way up here. "Since you don't remember this side as an exit, why don't we turn around and take a fork in the road to the right?" After Suhanxing suggested, he continued, "Actually, I was thinking before that we should have followed the direction of the mouse just now. Animals have a sharper sense of smell and hearing. Perhaps they noticed that it was the exit direction, so they ran towards that direction." Suhanxing actually had this idea in her heart before, but before discussing it with Zhou Hengyu, she was scared by the mice and ran recklessly towards the right side of the road. After catching up here, they unexpectedly discovered another door, so they naturally came here first to check and see if there was a way out. Regarding Suhanxing's speculation, Zhou Hengyu thought it was also possible, and just now he inferred from the traces on the wall that it was also the road on the right. However, it was also because Suhanxing followed Xiang Nuan and the others towards this side, so he also chased after them. Zhou Hengyu nodded, and Suhanxing went to call out to Lin Lu and Xiang Nuan, who were slightly calming down on the side. However, just as Suhanxing spoke up, Lin Lu shook her head desperately and said, "I won't go there. So many mice are too scary, I don't want to go there." Watching Lin Lu's lips turn white, Suhanxing couldn't bear to say, "Zhou Hengyu, you said there is also a way here. Have you said before that there are many entrances and exits here? Will there also be one here? I think there should be such a large storage area in Egypt, but..." Although Zhou Hengyu had never visited in his previous life, he could roughly determine from the several entrances and exits he had found in his previous life that there would be corresponding storage areas under the exhibition halls of the original countries where the British Museum could be used as a treasure, which is also the entrance and exit of the storage areas. So it's not difficult to infer that there must be entrances and exits here, but I haven't walked here in my previous life, and I really don't know if the road is still open. Then let's go over here and look for it first. Speaking of which, Suhanxing paused and said, "Or maybe. Let's split up and go to both sides to see the situation. If we find something wrong, we'll quickly turn back and find another team. How about that?" Although it is indeed more time-saving and efficient to walk separately, it is as soon as Zhou Hengyu thought of parting, the face of Suhanxing, who had been grabbed by the giant claws of the Cyber Star Man towards the sky, covered in blood but with a smile on his face, said to him, "Let's work hard to survive," unconsciously appeared in his mind. Zhou Hengyu instinctively clenched his fist, his nails embedded in his palm. Even though he had died once, he could still feel the sadness and self-blame in his heart at that time. In his previous life, he never forgot that scene before he died. So, he will never repeat the same mistakes in his lifetime. "No, we can never separate." Zhou Hengyu immediately rejected Suhanxing's proposal. "I think it's easy to get lost by acting alone now. Since we've already arrived here, let's go take a look first. It's best to have an exit, and even if it doesn't matter. It won't take too long. There is no need to face the mouse directly on this road, and none of them have any objections to Nwanha Linlu." A few people continued down the path between the shelves in the Egyptian storage area, passed through a separate protective door, and then walked around to the next storage room's partition room. When Suhanxing came out of this cultural relic storage filled with gold artifacts in Egypt, she deliberately walked last. She observed that there were not too many monitoring devices here, and most of them were installed near the entrance and exit. It is possible that this storage room was built relatively early and the lower part is not easily renovated. Previously, Suhanxing had seen the storage room under the China Pavilion, and now she is more daring. She also took some distinctive things with her at the end of the team and packed them into the space. However, after passing through a few small storage compartments, they should have reached the largest storage space in the Egyptian storage room. The entrance and exit of Exhibition Hall 33 last time was in the largest storage area in China, and they also found a location here that seemed to lead to the entrance and exit. The road here is very similar to the one we came down from before, it could be the entrance and exit. Zhou Hengyu turned around and said to Suhanxing and the others. A few people also saw the dawn of hope, and their footsteps accelerated a lot. Just as they passed through a flat, transportation-like passage, they saw the scene before them. This road is indeed an entrance and exit, but it has completely collapsed. The surrounding rocks have burnt and cut marks, indicating that they have been previously attacked by laser scanning from extraterrestrial fighter jets. The staircase that originally led to the entrance and exit broke down, and the elevator on the side twisted and collapsed due to losing support. In the collapsed ruins, they saw some severed arms, limbs, and mottled blood, probably due to attacks, as people who couldn't escape fell from above with the collapsed floor. Lin Lu was even more frightened by a bloody body tissue in an unknown location, crying and vomiting. At present, apart from the attack that affected Zhao Wenwen earlier, they have seen a little from the damaged ceiling, and they have not officially seen the situation of the extraterrestrial conflict between the two sides. However, the scene here also shows how intense the battle outside is. Suhanxing felt extremely uncomfortable when she saw such a scene. However, she wanted to live in such a world and not be scared to collapse by such a small amount of corpses. She reached out and pressed her hand on her forehead, thinking about treatment. She cleared her mind for a while, and soon, her whole body felt much more comfortable and the feeling of nausea was reduced. The treatment was indeed effective in terms of mental health, and Suhanxing reached out and lightly patted Lin Lu's back, making her feel more comfortable. Lin Lu quickly felt much more comfortable with Suhanxing's movements, but she still didn't have much energy. She lazily hugged Xiang Nuan's arm and didn't dare to look over here at all. It seems that we have been attacked here before. If we want to get out of here, we may have to climb up from here. Zhou Hengyu looked up and saw that from here to the ground exit, it was at least 3 or 4 stories high, and the side walls and pillars left a little opportunity for the exit. I dare not, it's really too high, I'm afraid. Lin Lu looked up at the words and shook her head violently. Xiang Nuan frowned and said, it's really too high, and we don't have any protection. If it falls, we don't have to worry about whether we can still live. Suhanxing also shook her head. Although she used to enjoy climbing, without any protection, at such a high height, she also had some liver tremors. Zhou Hengyu glanced at several girls, and indeed, it was very dangerous for him to climb here, let alone the fact that Xiang Nuan and Lin Lu were still wearing skirts, making it inconvenient to move around. In the current situation, any small situation encountered during the climbing process can be fatal. Let's go back. Since we can't get out of here, let's go back and try again. At this point, I think the mice should have dispersed quite well. There is no other way, this road is not open, so we still need to find a new exit to leave here. Chapter 10. Finding a Way Out. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although this storage area looks relatively safe now, the collapse of this exit also indicates that after a few more damages, it will eventually collapse. And even if it's really safe here, they can't just stay here and not leave. Based on the current situation, there won't be any extra rescue. There won't be any food or drink here, and once it's exhausted, there won't be any hope. Only by going out and leaving here can they have more opportunities to survive. A few people returned because the route had just been passed through and everyone's impression was still quite deep. In addition, this distance was not too far, so a few people turned back on the same path. When passing through several storage areas of the Egyptian storage room again this time, everyone was all focused on heading back, with only Suhanxing following at the end of the queue and finding an opportunity to pick up a batch of cultural relics from the Egyptian storage room. After running for about 10 minutes, they returned to the path they had encountered mice on before. Walking along the corridor on the left side of the road, the mouse still exists, but it has transformed from a live mouse to a dead mouse. Zhou Hengyu frowned and shone a flashlight on the ground, and the mouse's body was also in a tragic state of death. On the ground, you can see blood splattering everywhere, and there are also many cutting scratches on the surrounding walls, like being indiscriminately cut by something sharp, but the marks on the walls are not very deep. Be careful, the situation here is a bit wrong. Seeing the injury on the mouse, Zhou Hengyu immediately realized that it was most likely a reconnaissance robot of Cybertron's mechanical creatures. This type of reconnaissance robot is not very big, only about 8.9 centimeters tall, and looks more like a mechanical crab with 6 retractable mechanical claws hanging on a circular body. Each part of their mechanical claws can stretch and retract freely, and when all the mechanical claws perfectly retract into the body, the entire body becomes a metal ball. After becoming spherical, they can extend serrated spikes in the middle of the spherical shell, cutting the target through high-speed rotation. Their movement speed is very fast, and the joints of their limbs can be freely extended and switched. They can even change shape while running. Due to their small size, they can enter many places, so they are used by Cybertron mechanical creatures for reconnaissance. But they are also small, and their weaknesses are very obvious, that is, their attack and protection abilities are relatively average. However, even if their attack power is relatively weak, they are highly aggressive and very dangerous, so caution must be exercised. Regarding the issue of the small robot on Cyberstar, Zhou Hengyu cannot directly remind Suhanxing because there is also Xiang Nuan and Lin Lu nearby. He only vaguely points out that the current state is very dangerous. If you find something later, run quickly and I will try to hold it down. No matter how small and weak the defense of these small reconnaissance robots are, they cannot be killed with bare hands. I remember in the past, they broke their baseball bat in order to smash a small reconnaissance robot on Cybertron. So, when encountering situations without weapons, the best way is to find cover and use it to conceal oneself. Because these small robots are probably pursuing speed, avoiding interference from the surroundings to make them more focused, their vision is not very good, or their field of vision is not wide enough. Once hidden in their blind spots, as long as there is no sound, there is a possibility of avoidance. However, it should also be noted that they are very flexible and rotate very quickly. When avoiding them, be sure to find cover, otherwise it will be useless. Suhanxing glanced at Zhou Hengyu, knowing that he must have discovered something, and his gaze around him became even more alert. A few people walked cautiously forward, trying not to step on the broken mouse corpses as much as possible, but there were too many to completely avoid. Lin Lu was completely immersed in Xiang Nuan's arms, afraid to watch the scene before her. Occasionally, accidentally stepping on a slippery object would make her want to scream. Fortunately, Zhou Hengyu had warned from the beginning not to make any noise, as it could potentially attract even more terrifying things. So Lin Lu bit her finger in her mouth and didn't dare to make any sound. Xiang Nuan has always had a lot of courage, but she has always been afraid of mice, which is why she was so panicked before. Now that the live mouse has turned into a dead mouse, although the scene is a bit disgusting, it makes Xiang Nuan feel a little less scared and tightly embraces Lin Lu to move forward. Following this passage filled with mouse corpses, one could see the entrance and exit that Zhou Hengyu remembered in his previous life. However, it was quite quiet here, and there were fewer mouse corpses on the ground. This situation somewhat relieved Zhou Hengyu. It seems that not only the mice have been completely eradicated, but also the cyber reconnaissance robot seems to be not here. Perhaps after killing the mice, they didn't find anything they needed for Cybertron, so Yu read a book www.yuyukeangshu.net and left as well. Zhou Hengyu, is that the entrance and exit over there? Suhanxing pointed to a direction that looked very similar to the original route they entered and asked. I have seen two entrances and exits before, and their overall channel styles are very similar. Zhou Hengyu, who was walking ahead, had already seen the elevator next to the stairs. The elevators here were still in good condition, but everyone dared not use them. That's right, you have already seen the elevator. As if seeing the dawn, the four of them took steps and ran towards the stairs. They climbed up layer by layer, almost 3 or 4 floors high. Finally, when they turned a corner, they saw the entrance and exit. That's it. Zhou Hengyu reached out and pushed the door upwards. The door has been closed. The entrance and exit above are closed. Judging from the occasional footprints along the stairs, the dozen or so staff members who first escaped from here should have run straight here and left, but when they left, they closed the entrance and exit doors again. Zhou Hengyu remembers seeing the process of opening a door in the previous life. Opening a door from the inside is not as complicated as entering from the outside, and does not require as much verification. It only needs to be opened with a key. However, even so, wanting to open the door is still a headache-inducing thing. The door is closed, so we can only try smashing it first. Wait for me, I need to find something to use as a tool. This door is quite thick, and Zhou Hengyu cannot guarantee it, but it is currently the only way they can get out. How can we do it without trying? At this moment, Suhanxing waved her hand and pulled Lin Lu, whose face was slightly pale, to the front. If it's just opening the door, I don't think it's that difficult. I can give this job to Lulu to try.